Hello and welcome back. You're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name's Anna Kalczyńska. The raise of reciprocal tariffs between the U.S. and China has been delayed for at least 90 days, while the pause creates breathing room for Beijing and Washington to secure an amicable deal. It sends strong signals to Europe. Despite the trade flows between U.S. and China having been hit this year, with U.S. imports of Chinese goods cut nearly in half, experts warn the Europeans should be vigilant regarding how these discussions unfold, as it could give China unfettered access to the American market. Joining me to discuss the state of play is Tomasz Włostowski, Managing Partner, EU Strategies. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us this morning here in Warsaw.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let us begin with a simple question. Why has the implementation of these steep tariffs been extended?
Well, for a number of reasons. The main one is that President Trump actually doesn't want to impose very high tariffs on China, and that's because we've already seen what happened when he did that last time around May. The stock market and the bond markets reacted very strongly, and President Trump was sort of forced into a compromise with the Chinese, lowering the tariffs, not because he really wanted to do it, but because he realized that he's reached what the sort of financial markets can take. So right now what's happening is President Trump is trying to sort of extract some concessions from the Chinese that will allow him to claim, look, I've sort of won this war. I've actually forced the Chinese into making these concessions to the United States. But the Chinese at the same time, they're very savvy negotiators, and they understand a couple of things. Number one is they understand that Trump needs a deal. So if And he probably needs a deal more than they do. That's number one. Number two, they also have a lot of leverage on the United States, mainly their rare earth exports, which both sort of American companies, but also European companies really need. And that's really sort of a choke point in which the Chinese can sort of pressure the United States not to give in. Mm-hmm. And number three, President Trump also seems to really want to have a personal one-on-one summit with President Xi, and the Chinese know that, so they're also using that for leverage.
All right. So which sectors are being discussed? Because Trump recently relaxed some of those export restrictions, allowing such firms as AMD and NVIDIA to resume sales of certain chips to China. So is that a typical Trump economy policy, or is it something different?
It's very difficult to say what that is, to be honest, because, this basically not only shocked the market, I think, but also shocked a lot of the sort of national security experts, not only in the United States, but around the world. It also sort of shocked the legal experts because, this is the first time in history that companies are basically paying to get an export license. I mean, let's just recall for the benefit of the viewers, right? Those two companies, NVIDIA and AMD, agreed to pay to the U.S. government 15% of their export revenues in exchange for an export license, right, to sell a very sort of high and very, very, very sophisticated chips. And again, the main policy of the United States versus China from Biden to Trump was, we are going to deny these very sophisticated microchips, semiconductors to the Chinese, especially the ones in AI. And here it appears that it's really a matter of money. Now, sort of going back to your question on what's on the table, the main objective of China is to sort of relax American export controls. And this was a very welcome sign for China to see that the Trump administration is caving in a little bit because, this deal where the export license is issued in exchange for payment, at the end of the day, it allows sort of similar arrangements on all the other export licenses. So I think for the Chinese, this was a very welcome sign.
All right. So what alternative options might China pursue, such as, strengthening cooperation with BRICS or other global trade alliances and partners?
Well, look, I think, it's difficult to predict, right? But let's just put things in perspective. The U.S. market, although very important for China, it's about 4% of Chinese GDP, 4%. I mean, is that a lot? Yes, significant. But is that really a sort of make it or break it number? No, it isn't. Of course, China is the American market is a very, very lucrative and important market for the Chinese exporters. So, of course, to the degree they can enter the market they want to, it's very difficult to sort of replicate for a number of reasons. It's they import a lot. The U.S. consumers are quite happy to try new things and so on. So it's not a market that you can easily replace. But I think predominantly China realizes it doesn't really need to replace this market because they can. I think when President Xi looks at President Trump, his main conclusion is I can make a deal with Trump. The only question is what the terms are. So we need to sort of play tough. We need to sustain the pressure for quite a number of months, probably, and that's why we have the 90-day extension that you inquired about. But at the end of the day, we're going to land on some acceptable deal.
All right. So let us focus now on Europe, because the U.S.-China tariff tensions redirect global trade or towards or away from European markets. Where's Europe in all this?
Well, this is an excellent question, right? I guess we can say we've struck a deal with the United States, although, I think it's important to point out that, most experts, myself included, they don't fully understand what the terms of the deal are because, as all deals with President Trump, they're made on sort of oral agreements. Nothing's really fully settled. Nothing really put down in writing. Normally, trade negotiations take years. Here, it's one meeting and we have a deal. So how this deal between the EU and US will be implemented is quite unclear for now. That's number one. Number two, of course, Europe is looking at the terms of the eventual deal between China and the United States with a lot of caution, I think, and a lot of concern, because the European Commission, which struck the deal, and let's just recall for the viewers, 15% tariffs the United States is able to impose on all American exports. EU has to, import a lot of energy, 750 billion, make investments and so on. I think there's a lot of concern in Brussels over how this deal is going to play out. And also, if there is a deal with the US, I think it's also going to give some sort of sigh of relief for the Brussels policymaker, because let's just keep in mind that most of European industry is extremely concerned that if the Chinese exporters get completely cut off from the American market, they're going to come to Europe and they're going to flood the European market with all the excess capacity production they cannot sell on the US market. So some type of a deal with the United States is probably very welcome in Europe.
Exactly, but it remains to be seen how deep this relief is going to be. To what extent, right, might Europe benefit from trade diversion if US and China's tariffs remain elevated?
Well, absolutely. So the terms of the deal will be very important, and then it also depends on what the sectoral sort of scope of the deal will be, because China has the excess capacity in steel, a lot of metals, a lot of sort of low-level manufacturing production. So I think those sectors are the ones that Europe is particularly concerned about, because they would be happy if part of that overcapacity is sort of redirected back to the United States. But then let's remember there are also things that Europe wants to be buying from China. A lot of things related to to the climate policy. This is where the Chinese have been getting an upper edge, and this is something that a lot of companies in Europe feel we need to be buying from China. So it's not like we're trying to separate completely from the Chinese exporters and separate the two economies, because and this is something that China has also been advocating, which is that both economies should be sort of cooperating and be in some ways supplemental to each other. But then again, in the manufacturing sector, we're direct competitors, which is exactly why the European Commission is looking probably very carefully at what the terms of the deal with the United States will be.
Thank you so much. So 90 days, basically 3 months in practical terms for the US and China trade process. Is much or not really? Remains to be seen. We are absolutely watching closely the situation as it evolves. Tomasz Włostowski, managing partner, EU strategist, was our guest this morning. Thank you so much, sir, and have a good day.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. Please stay tuned to TVP World for more news to come and other interesting comments.